Antony Blinken sat down with Benjamin Hall of Fox News. It's great to see him back reporting and back interviewing after the injuries he incurred, serious injuries he incurred, reporting on the war in Ukraine. It was just a reminder that regardless of what you think is right, U.S. policy, wrong U.S. policy, the war correspondents go in there so that we can all see what's going on, not to take sides, but just to report on the news. And they risk their lives to get us that information, and he certainly did. But now he's back, and he asked specifically when he sat down with Tony Blinken, there's two things we want to focus on. The first was the Hunter Biden letter, because as you know, the CIA director, Mike Morell, has come out and said, I didn't even know, he testified this to the Judiciary Committee, that prior to Secretary Blinken calling me, I had no intent to write this statement. He says, I did not. He said, so the call from Blinken triggered you joining the statement? It did, yes. And Morell testified that around October 17th, Blinken reached out to him to discuss the Hunter Biden laptop story. And at the time, Blinken served as a senior advisor to the Biden campaign. So take a listen when Benjamin Hall asked him about the letter. Bite 10.
Can you explain what your role was in that and if you incentivized it?
Well, first, one of the great benefits of this job is that I don't do politics and don't engage in it. But with regard to that letter, I didn't, wasn't my idea, didn't ask for it, didn't solicit it, and I think the testimony that the former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morell, put forward confirms that.
Yeah, Mike Morell didn't ask Blinken to come, whether or not the letter was his idea. I'm assuming the letter was Hunter Biden's idea. Someone else's idea that they were all then implementing. Did he ask for the letter? I don't think that anyone is accusing Blinken of asking for the letter. Hunter Biden was asking for the letter.
He's not answering the actual question being asked.
And then did he solicit the letter? Well, that's the same as not asking for it. He just said the same thing twice right there. That does not contradict what Mike Morell testified to, which is that prior to getting a call about this from Blinken, I had no intent on writing this statement. So the idea, again, and by the way, Blinken says in there the great thing about his job as Secretary of State, which is a political appointed job, by the way, you're appointed by the President of the United States who's partisan, is that I don't have to get involved in politics. He says that, right? Except for the fact that when the letter was done, he was not Secretary of State. You know what he was? A senior advisor to the Biden campaign. Logan, he was directly involved in politics. He was a political hack, if you want to call it that, or political operative.
And he still is, really, if you look at what he's saying. So Benjamin Hall, again, was interviewing him, asked Blinken this question. He asked him about the Biden laptop, whether it was Russian disinformation. Let's take a listen.
Do you accept that the laptop is not Russian disinformation?
Again, from my perspective, I'm not engaging in politics. I've got a lot on my agenda, things that we've just talked about, trying to help the Ukrainians in the Russian aggression against them, engaging with allies and partners around the world, and dealing with some of the challenges posed by China. We have a situation now in Sudan that's fully occupied my time, so that's where my focus is.
There you go.
So
completely deflected it again.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't solicit the letter.
From my perspective, I'm not engaging in politics.
From my perspective, and I've got a lot on my agenda, so I can't answer if you were wrong, which, by the way, the news reported they were wrong. I mean, all media outlets have now said, so I assume he sees the news, and he saw that the news said that it was not Russian disinformation, that the laptop was, in fact, legitimately Hunter Biden's, and he could have left it there and said, well, the news did report that, it was,
things were confirmed.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into any more than that. Okay, at least, but they will never acknowledge any of their wrongdoing, which makes them bad leaders. They don't have to answer questions. You know what was also pretty outstanding, also just upsetting, and Benjamin Hall conducted himself very professionally. I'm not sure I would have in his same situation, because he also asked about whether or not President Biden has put us in a safer place in the world. Take a listen to Blinken.
Do you think that the world is now a safer place under the Biden administration than it was under the Trump administration?
In my judgment, what I can say is this. I think our standing, the standing of the United States around the world in the last few years, is much stronger than it was. And you can see this in survey after survey, and I can feel it in the work that I'm doing every single day.
The world is much stronger. Our standing in the world is much stronger than it was. Benjamin Hall lost his legs The person he answered that to, the reporter there, Benjamin Hall, maybe you've seen his story on Fox News, was nearly killed covering the Ukraine war, which was started because President Biden and Blinken were unable to diplomatically stop and negotiate a stop to that war before it ever begun. Because remember, they couldn't stop Crimea either. So a guy asking him the question about, do you think America's in a better place right now, has no legs. He is able to walk, thank God, because of medical improvements. He's got prosthetics and went through the story on Fox News. You should watch it just to see his return and kind of the ups and downs going through that process, having young children. But the idea that he could sit across from him and say without, just without any irony, yeah, we're in a safer place, except for the fact that you were covering a major war that started because our diplomacy failed, because the U.S. doesn't have the standing in the world that it used to, Logan, where if it told the Russians, you better knock it off,
they do.
They knocked it off.
Right.
Or if you told the Saudis, who should be our friends and allies, don't do a deal with Iran, let's repair our relationship. They don't do a deal with Iran, but they have. Look at Sudan. They leave Americans behind. Afghanistan, they leave Americans behind. American men and women get killed. So there he is. He's talking to a reporter, a war reporter, who lost his legs covering a war that they couldn't prevent.